of the things I liked about it was quite like the town of Moodley. Can you tell me is that a real place? Was that built? Is that a studio?
Well, the town of Moodley. I mean, it is a real place, but it's not actually a town.
Right.
We shot it. Because of the budget that we had, we couldn't actually afford to go to a real little village and take over and shoot at night and blow things up and cause chaos and have people screaming all night long, because that's very disruptive if you're doing it in a real place. So we needed to find somewhere isolated, surrounded by woods, and also that would be this weird town centre. So we actually built the town, but in a place which had a lot of existing buildings. It was it was all done at the King Edward VII Hospital in West Sussex, which is a hospital which is now closed down. Famous residents who died there include Boris Karloff and Alec Guinness. So there's a nice sort of horror fantasy connection to the hospital.
I didn't know that.
But because it was a big old hospital complex, there's a huge area with a load of outbuildings and places like nurses' quarters and so you just got this weird area, and we took over that area, and then we built onto it, and we prefabbed all of the shop fronts.
Right.
And we actually built a row of terraced houses in front of the church. And because it was a hospital, there's a real church there. So the church is real. So we built the village all around the church, and that's so basically, for us, Moodley was absolutely real, and everybody working in the film was also staying at the hospital, cast and crew. So literally, just off set was where we were staying in the old hospital, which was a bit sort of scary because it sort of smelled of death for a while. But after a few days of working hard, you kind of don't care. So everyone was living and working there. So it was like doing a film in a studio. But so our set was there, but we would just walk off and we would be there and we'd shoot. So it was a fantastic way of working. And we had complete control over our environment without upsetting anyone as well. So
that must have actually made quite a nice way to work to some extent. Just focus in one area.
It was great, yeah. So when we were working, it was like, right, let's go down to Moodley. Yeah. It was. I mean, it was real. It was real. So.
Oh, that's really good. Another thing I liked was that you didn't seem to rely too much on CGI. I mean, I'm not even sure if there was any CGI.
There's hardly any, because basically I wanted to go old school with all of the makeup effects.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that important to you?
Absolutely, because I've done some CGI in my previous couple of films.
Evil Aliens.
Evil Aliens, and then there was some in Pumpkinhead sequel that I did, which was terrible. In Pumpkinhead, I think the stuff in Evil Aliens was quite good for considering what we had, because it was all done in my basement. So with just two of us. So that was
that's pretty good.
But obviously it's not ILM standards. But in Pumpkinhead, it was terrible, the CGI that got done.
Yeah.
And I've increasingly got to dislike CGI. And I think the audience has as well. Certainly a horror film audience don't like it. And I think everyone's sick of it because it's not real. What we wanted to do is we wanted to go back to old school proper makeup techniques.
Right. Yeah.
The only CGI in the film is there's a couple of bits where we had some wire rigs, like when people run, and all of that stuff had to be painted out. But that's not really CGI. It's just using digital manipulation. But no, we avoided CGI in this because I basically am sick of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just saw Drag Me to Hell, and I really like it, but there's just a couple of bits of CGI where it just goes wrong.
Exactly,
it's like, that took me out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think CGI takes you out of it, and I think it does, because all of a sudden you're aware that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said for doing it for real, because obviously CGI. If you're trying to do a dinosaur, obviously you can't do that for real. But having said that, I think the thing is that the audience is just increasingly aware that things are unreal, and when you see that CGI moment, it just takes you out for a second. So I agree with you there. With Doghouse, we try to avoid that, so hopefully you stay with it.
Yeah, well, I was when I was thinking about that, I couldn't think of any bits where I thought, hold on, actually maybe there isn't any CGI.
Yeah.
I thought
Well, like I say, there's a couple of tiny little bits. Like there's the bit at the end when the car crashes, which was where the van crashes, which is real. But when the wheel comes off, that was CGI because we couldn't actually make that happen. But we needed to total the. So that's an instance I think of using CGI in a way where it's really acceptable, but it's not like trying to do it for with the Zombirds and everything. We just went with proper effects.
Oh, brilliant. And just on a personal level, I love comic shops, so I loved it when we saw Matt's comic shop.
Excellent.
Did you have fun putting that together? And whose Evil Dead 2 poster was it?
That was Evil Dead 1. It was the.
Is it? Oh,
apologies. That's the original Evil Dead. Evil Dead quad UK quad Palace Pictures quad. Yeah, I've got the actual. I've got my Evil Dead up there. Look there. So there's Evil Dead 2 video up there, and Evil then the tin box set.
The Anchor tin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so. But no, that's that artwork is one of the. I love that artwork so much, and it was done by Graham Humphreys, who I've worked with over the years on a couple of things, and so we got the permission off him to do that because Palace is now defunct.
Oh yes, yeah.
And obviously, and we've got the Evil Dead comic in there as well.
Oh, I didn't see that. I saw all of Dan's comics.
Yeah, Dan's comics. The comic that Matt is actually leafing through, trying to sell to the kid, is the Evil Dead comic.
Oh, I didn't.
So we tried to tie that in because obviously Sam Raimi is one of my big influences, and Evil Dead is the film that really one of the films that made me want to make movies. So I think that's why I always like having a little nod to it.
Yeah. But it's perfectly placed,
Well, it's a comic shop, and interesting that actually the shop we shot there in wasn't a comic shop. It's a cult video store called Today Is Boring. And the girl Tree Carr who runs that, she plays the zombie of Julie.
Oh,
but she does the zombie walk every year.
Yes,
and they're actually doing a zombie walk for Doghouse this Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So in Leicester Square. So I don't know if anyone will see this in time.
Well, I'll put a try.
Yeah.
Right?
So, but if anyone goes this Sunday, which I don't know, is that Sunday the 7th, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Sunday the 7th, 1 o'clock at Leicester Square. Be there and be a zombie.
If we can just talk about some more general things about horror. I mean, England's always had a brilliant sort of history of horror, and particularly, I particularly like the 70s. You had Peter Walker, Norman J. Warren, Tygon, Amicus, and all that sort of stuff. How is it now making horror films and genre films in Britain? Is it easy? Do the cinemas want to take them?
To be honest, I think making films in England is very tough. It's very tough to get the budgets together.
I can imagine.
Especially, with my early films, especially when you're trying to raise them from private sources, and it's been a struggle. Obviously, with each film, I've got better known, so it gets a little bit easier. Yeah. And then when you have, like I say, when you've done a few things and you show you can do it, I think people are willing to trust you more. But I wouldn't say any film has been easy to get made. No. With a film like Doghouse, if it's a success, then hopefully it'll be a lot easier to get the next one up and running. Yeah. And I think you just need to progress with each film really. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of producers who still are quite snobby towards horror in the UK.
Oh really?
They kind of look down on it a bit. I think that there is still this very kind of like a lot of the financiers, even though horror makes money, they tend to not like it. Maybe, but that's pretty. I think it's their own personal taste. They don't like it. Whereas I love horror films, so I love making them. So, but I think that hopefully there's a little bit of an upsurgence of horror films, but it's not like there could always be more, I think. It's great to see that some of the new younger directors are making horror stuff though, because I think they love it, and I think as kids and teenagers we grew up with it.
Yes.
So I think that the new generation has got much more of a love of horror, whereas I think the older guard maybe don't always like it so much. But hopefully that's going to change, and we'll see. Depends on what happens over the next couple of years.
Well, there seem to be so many good genre directors in England. There's Chris Smith. Who else? Sorry, Adam Mason.
But Adam's now living in
Los
Angeles. Yeah, he lives in Los Angeles. San Francisco. And Edgar Wright's doing his new film in Toronto. And Chris Smith is Chris is still working. But what tends to happen is that's the reason you're going back to. In the UK, you can't get enough money to make bigger movies, so you end up getting funded by Americans. And ultimately that's why a lot of talent tends to leave our shores, which is a real shame. Hopefully they'll come back, but it's just so difficult to raise money here, and I think that's if producers were a bit smarter, they should spot the kind of talent like these guys, and they should be offering us money. No, seriously, because they can make money as well, rather than make films which don't make any. Then they can make more. You can fund films which don't make money if you make films which do make money.
Yes.
So it would be But I think we need some producers who have that kind of love of the genre again, and people like Steve Willie and Nick Powell back in the Palace days.
Yes.
They were the kind of guys who really got that.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can get some producers like that again in this country, then we can start getting it back on track. So brilliant. We'll see.
Another thing I wanted to ask about, Nucleus Films, your DVD label. How important is that to you? Because I think each DVD is really nice, and you do such a good job, like Death Ship.
Oh, thank you.
Had so many extras, and finally getting Bloodbath at the House of Death out.
Oh gosh,
must have been just getting it out was a major achievement. Well, I mean, how important is that?
Well, Nucleus. Let me just explain. Some people might not realise, but Nucleus Films is a DVD label which distributes cult films in the UK, which I set up with my friend Mark Morris. And as a film fan and a film lover, we felt that there were a lot of great movies which just weren't getting released on DVD.
Yeah, absolutely.
And which the fans have wanted for years to see. And if there was a chance of tracking down the rights to them, because often people didn't know who owned them, or we had to try and track down the producers, and it would like something like Bloodbath at the House of Death, for instance, took Mark about 2 years to find the rights holders, because the producer is now in Australia. So it was we had to go on. It's like a sort of Sherlock Holmes adventure, just trying to find out who owns them. But then when we do the deals, we want to remaster them as best we can. And then because of Nucleus, we started doing a lot of DVD extras, filming directors and actors, and we wanted to put collectors' packages together and audio commentaries and just stuff which gives you a real insight into the filmmaking process and often how these strange films got to be made in the first place. So yeah, it's very important to me because it's almost like it's almost giving back something to fans, but it's also a way of making a bit of money when I'm not making movies. Sure. But you know, it's great. It's a lovely way of, and I'm being a film fan. It's wonderful to see these films being back out and released. And Nucleus is all about that. We really wanted to push it for collectors.
Well, you introduced me to Gwendolyn, which I've never seen. You know, because I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, but
and that was amazing.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing film, and the like visuals and the whole. It's just an epic kind of, you know, like Indiana Jones meets Barbarella.
Yeah.
It's erotic, it's bizarre, you know, and it's one of those films which when you see it, you just go, "Wow, how comes I didn't know about it?"
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. I love that moment of discovery.
Exactly,
how does that slip through the net?
And what's become interesting, I think, the internet has actually made it so easy to get things now that people have lost that sense of discovery. And sometimes because everything feels that it's too available. And maybe the thing with Nucleus, we still wanted people to feel that they're discovering something. And maybe, you know, that's why when you see the Nucleus logo, hopefully you're going to think, wow, this is going to be something that's going to maybe take me by surprise. Because often you don't get that with a lot of things because you know so much about everything before you see it. So I hope so. Anyway, that's the kind of philosophy, and we just wanted to get good movies back out there.
One final question. One of the things we like to do on our site is talk about people's influences and their inspirations.
Right. Yes.
Could you just talk about anyone, not even in the film industry, like in any area, that's been an influence on your work or an inspiration to you to sort of create, you know, films and do everything?
Well, I mean, I think it was more. I think my inspirations were very much from. As a teenager growing up in the 80s, mid 80s, you know, the fact that I got to see films like Evil Dead 2 at the cinema, and also all the video nasty era and collecting videos in those days. It was the work of like young directors like Sam Raimi made The Evil Dead when he was 19 years old.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and Don Coscarelli also made Phantasm when he was like about 18.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Now, and these were some of my favourite films when I was young. And when you first watch them, you don't realise they were made by teenagers. And I was just starting to make films as I was about 16. And then when I found out that they made their feature films, I thought, oh man, I'm so behind. It's like how am I ever gonna get to that level? Because these guys are. So I didn't make my first film, Rosebud's Smile Till I was 26.
Right.
So you know, I thought I was, you know, whereas a lot of people say, oh, that's really quite young, but to me it's like, wow, I'm really. So it was actually the directors who made those kind of quirky DIY indie horror stuff, and Peter Jackson. Bad Taste was another great influence, and
That's incredible, the story, the homemadeness of that, you know.
Yeah, and these films used to show at the Scala Cinema, and we would go there, and they had all-nighters, and you know, so this is the days before you could get a lot of them on DVD, or it was VHS back then. So a lot of these things weren't available, so you had to go on a pilgrimage to see them.
Well, it was. Sorry to interrupt. I used to love going to the Scala. I was, you know, such fond memories of discovering things there, and you know, such atmosphere in that.
Absolutely,
place.
And I think seeing films in that way back then bonded you with the audience a lot more. And I think the one thing about maybe when people just see stuff on DVD these days, or even on the internet or whatever, that it doesn't have that. You don't get the audience experience. I think maybe, you know, that's what made genre fans quite close, because it was a real audience experience. And horror films certainly always work better if you see them with a group. You know, however much you enjoy watching stuff on your own, there's nothing. It's far better. Seeing like something like Evil Dead 2 with 500 people is a far more enjoyable experience than watching it at home on your own. Not because not watching it's not great, but because it's just you get so much reaction from people on those kind of movies. And I think that's something which that's what inspired me, to like seeing the way that people reacted to horror films and these kind of movies. And I always loved the fact that they were so imaginative. So it was very much that. It was very much people like Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson that inspired me, because it made me think it was possible to make these kind of movies and have fun and make movies which would be really entertaining. So I tried to sort of take that forward, and obviously you have different inspirations along the way, but that was the kind of sort of way that made me feel it would be possible at a time when it was really hard to get into filmmaking. So,
well, that's great. I mean, I certainly think you achieved that, because I always think your films are really entertaining.
Oh, cheers!
So,
thank you very much.